What makes you happy?
Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ishmael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or topic that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. Today, I have the great opportunity to talk to Anderson Silver, the host of the Stoicism for a Better Life podcast and the author of 3 books. We discuss methods and ways to live a good life, and that will let you have a good night's sleep. We discuss how Stoicism can control the chaos of thoughts and everyday actions. We discuss how you can find real happiness by focusing on what's in your control. We talk about emotions and their importance on decision making, and how Anderson managed to work with his own anger through Stoicism and what we can learn from the Incredible Hulk. We discuss Memento Mori and the ability to accept the fact that we will all die someday. We talk about the difference of your autopilot thinking and your rational mind, and we discuss the strength of journaling and a to-do list. We can start the conversation, and my first question, Anderson, would be, how do you feel today?
How do I feel? I feel great because I just had a super cool conversation with yourself for the 20 minutes before we started here. You have an amazing story, my friend. I love you already. Awesome. And I look forward to I told you, Netflix series I'm going to watch. But, if we're going to put the context of this, or rather, if we're going to put this conversation into context, I am the vessel in which I exist, rather, is feeling quite under the weather. There's quite a lot of painful discomfort, but I'm here as a good Stoic. I'm here doing my duties.
Thank you for the flowers, and thank you for showing up, and thank you for being here. And again, if there is at some point during the conversation a point that you say, okay, let's break, let's stop, just let us know. And thank you so much for being here. And yeah, for my understanding, you are a father, a Stoic, and the author of 3 books in regard to Stoicism. So do you want to tell us a little bit more? You earlier in our pre-conversation said you are in fact not a Stoic, but a Stoic practitioner. Do you maybe want to tell us a little bit about how do you differentiate that? And yeah, what makes you the person you are?
Sure. What makes me the person I am is I believe in details. Everything is in the details. I can't believe anything in faith. I need to understand things to their minutest detail. I need to be able to control things around me. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. So in the Western world, this asset worked great in my favor, and it gave me great success. But then luckily, by some cosmic miracle, I was able to parlay this into my spiritual quest too. And as I started studying different theologies and philosophies and whatnot, I realized to make the correlation between all of them, I need to define everything really carefully, at least in my own lexicon. So I've made my own definition of, okay, this is what this is, this is what this is. So when I wouldn't call myself a Stoic, because Stoicism, the Stoic philosophy, is a beautiful, it's a philosophy, but there's a lot of theism behind it as well. There's a great story behind it, and which was very normal for ancient, Greek or Roman philosophies, because it was tied to the cosmos. It was tied to the titans and the gods and what have you. And the stories are so beautiful. Even today, we're still making, blockbuster hits about them. So to be a Stoic, I would consider someone who has dedicated their life to the study of the school, to the practice of the school. I'm much more selfish than that. Unfortunately, I'm not that altruistic, but I am honest. I was just looking for a way to live a good life. I wanted to be able to sleep at night. Gosh darn it. It all boils down to a good night's sleep, if I'm being honest. And now I can say that now, no matter what's happening around me, no matter who, what, when, why, I sleep like a baby. I sleep like a champ, and even if my body doesn't sleep like a champ, I wake up still well rested, or as well rested as I can be. So my philosophy that I've put together with everything I've learned, it's heavily dominated by the Stoic approach or discipline to managing this mind-body duality, because this is what we're dealing with here. We live with this roommate in our mind that, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, to the listeners out there, consider anytime you've done something and then immediately regretted it, and like, how did I do that? Why did I do that? If you've ever thought something or done something else, in cartoons, we've seen like the little angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. In the Bible, you have the, a God speaking to you, and we've seen the duality throughout history. That's what I'm referring to. That lives in our brains. And to complicate matters more, that brain exists in this predominantly hairless bipedal monkey vessel that's very primitive and has very primitive defense mechanisms, which is where a lot of anxieties and emotions come from. So that's a mess in there. That is a hurricane of stuff happening. The discipline that Stoicism has introduced allows me to control that chaos, at least in my little microcosm. And that's what my philosophy is. And that's why I don't consider myself a Stoic, but a Stoic practitioner.
Okay, super interesting. And since when do you then practice Stoicism, and for how long have you been thinking? And maybe you give us a little background, because for my understanding, you're also not only the author of 3 Stoic books, but you also have a normal, I want to put that in parentheses here, job. So how do you combine, and what's your story? What is your day job in a way, and how do you combine that with Stoicism practice?
All right, so I was born and raised in North America, went to school, did great in school, got out of school, got my CPA, went out to the job market, crushed it, worked late hours, got the 6-figure salary, got married, had the kids, the house, the fence, the dogs, everything. And then I was still kind of not happy. I was still empty inside. And that's when I realized I was on this hedonic treadmill, just chasing. And at that point, now we're going back about 10 years, that's where my story really begins. Or my story is much longer than that, but let's say the new chapter of my life. Anderson Silver's story, because Anderson Silver didn't exist before then. Anderson Silver is my persona that wrote these books. And so he came into existence, let's say, at that singular point in time. So I never changed my job after that, because what spoke to me about Stoicism was it doesn't reject anything you have the same way it doesn't reject anything you don't have, right? A lot of philosophies will teach you indifference to things. You don't need that. True, you don't need it, but you don't need to get rid of it either. It's one and the same. All that matters is what you're doing. What is your intent? Are you doing it ethically? So for a Stoic, my intent is always, or rather must be, the betterment of humanity, because virtue for a Stoic like me is to work towards the betterment of humanity. This is where we kind of set our timeline, right? It's not just today. It's not all of time. It's, hey, our species. So let's try and make us humans better, right? Let's make our surroundings better while we're here. Let's make the world a little better. And again, apologies for my hoarseness, but I didn't cancel. I made it as a good Stoic. I did my duty, despite what my body feels. And so as a Stoic, I didn't change my job. However, I immediately changed how I do my job, slowly but surely. And it got me into trouble. It got me into trouble because when I started, let's say, treating my staff member, my group, my departments a little bit more equitably, right? It looked bad against other managers who might be treating theirs the same way, right? So that kind of paints a picture. So change is not easy. And as you know, not to compare myself, God forbid, to any of the Stoic philosophers back then that were pursued and lost their lives, but kind of like that, as I started changing my attitude, I realized, well, no, I'm being, shunned out of here. Okay, now I got to move on somewhere else, and I did. So I changed for first roles, and I found a good role, and then that was fine. And then I had to move on to another company, and that was fine. And I adjusted just like anybody else. Or some people adjust because they need more money. Some people adjust because they want to move to a location. I adjusted because all of a sudden my primary objective in life changed from the pursuit of wealth and happiness, quote unquote, to the pursuit of equanimity, which is true happiness, true joy, just not feeling anxiety, not living too high, not living too low, so that you're always in control of what you can control and work towards what matters to you. And what matters to me, make the world a better place.
Super inspiring, super interesting. And you basically said that this journey started roughly 10 years ago. Would you invite us a little bit? Did you have one drastic change? Was it slow, steady changes? And was it only on your professional career? Was it on your personal life? I believe that on such journeys, things start changing, right? Like personally, professionally. Do you want to take us on a tour a little bit there?
Yeah, sure. I wish I had a really cool story here. Like, there was this, I was hiking on this mountaintop and I was looking out, and I don't, unfortunately. But it's a true story. It's the story of most people. That's what I mean by it's a true story. The change was slow. One of my favorite quotes by the Dalai Lama is there's good change and then there's quick change, but never both, right? So good change comes from slow incremental efforts. And I say this in my books and my podcast all the time, right? Virtue is not about perfection, but it's about trying your best. So the journey was very slow. It started first 10 years ago with me going, hey, you're being, quote unquote, del ho, stop chasing after that next promotion and start taking a look at your life. Maybe 2 years after that, it was me starting to look at, maybe there is something to this religion thing. Maybe a year or two after that, it was, I hear a lot about this Rene Descartes guy. What is this cogito? What is this cogito ergo sum? I guess the juicy bits start, oh gosh, what would it be, about 6 years ago now? How I got introduced to Stoicism. And again, I really wish I had a cool story, but even this is going to be a letdown. I was going down south for a vacation because I was so burnt out from working so hard, right? And a late night after, drinking a bunch of expensive scotch, because, I wasn't drinking. I was classy. I had expensive scotch. I went on this Amazon purchase run, and I was just buying books to read on the beach because I'm like, I'm going to relax. I just want to read. And the algorithm somehow brought up this book called Moral Letters by a Stoic, by Seneca, right? And I said, oh, I've heard of Stoicism. I think the Silicon Valley, some people like that. So let me see. And I bought the book and I started reading, and then my mind just went, you hear the story all the time, people reading this ancient text from whatever, so east, west, from 1,000 years ago, from 3,000 years ago. And you go, how is this guy in my head understanding exactly my problems 3,000 years ago? Like, how did they understand my problems? It's because the human condition hasn't changed in millennia. We're still dealing with the same condition. Yeah, we've been great at innovating. Cool. Look how fast we're killing each other now. But the human condition has not changed. And this is why these things still speak to us today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is also what makes your story so relatable, right? I mean, it's not the big turning event of life, either good or bad, but it's really like this gradual change. And then you came into contact with the first Stoic book. And I guess from there, things just went down the path that you kept on reading, kept on educating yourself. If you would want to summarize Stoicism, or what Stoicism means for you. Is there a good summary for yourself that you can put out there and share with us?
Simple. Stoicism is the application of your rational mind in the present moment, period. So the Stoic philosophy teaches you, at least the way I apply it, the tools to be able to apply your rational mind in the present moment as much as possible.
Okay, very simple, very striking, in fact. What are those tools and what are implications for an everyday life that each and everybody of us can practice? Is there a generalization that we can give the people some tools out there?
A general tool that everybody can apply all the time? No, unfortunately. But the school itself is a practical philosophy. So you don't do Stoicism by reading and writing and remembering and repeating quotes. We say this all the time, both in the ancient books and the modern ones. There's a reason why the ancient books were about 100 pages. There's a reason mine are about 100 pages. We don't mince words. Stoics, we're not sophists, right? Straight to the point. The whole point is there is maybe, I don't know, but maybe there's 2-3 dozen rules you follow that give you a general idea of how to do life. And then you go figure it out for yourself. And this is what's important. Stoicism teaches you how to go figure it out for yourself. It doesn't tell you the rules. It's not deontology, like a religion, which it'll tell you do these steps in these situations, and then you're good to go. It's not consequentialism, like say utilitarianism, right? That's the most common consequentialism we know, where you think of the best potential outcome and then you follow that. We know there are pitfalls to both sides. Stoicism lands in the middle of the two, and it gives the tools to the individual to figure out in the present moment. Again, we go back to the rational mind, the emotionless rational mind in the present moment, to figure out morally, ethically speaking, what the right thing to do is and what the right or not the right thing to do is for themselves, right? This is why it has such a broad range of applicability. But again, I'm going off in a tangent here. I digress. It's just, these are fun things to talk about.
No, absolutely. And that's perfectly fine. So I understand that there is not one general rule that each and every Stoic follows, but it's rather implications for your life, and everybody has their own best way to live a life. And if we would all follow those guidelines, which are true for our own selves, then combined, we probably make this world a better place by living the lives that we live. Is that a fair summary of what you just said?
Yeah, there you go. Take emotions out of the equation, do your best in the moment, live one moment at a time, and just be a good human being, pretty much.
Very good, very good. And you just said take emotions out of the equation, and that would have been a question also. Which role do emotions play for Stoicism? Is a Stoic always positive, and does he neglect the negative changes? Or how would you talk about emotions, about positivity and Stoicism?
Well, positivity is just a state of mind where you recognize that things are going to, not be okay. Things are going to be, which is the only thing things can be. So things are going to be okay. That's what positivity is. Another way of saying positivity is this too shall pass. Like, no matter how bad it is, just hang in there. Like, you'll be fine. But emotions for a Stoic, it's the enemy, because emotions are bad advisors. Okay. And it always comes down to, I want to do the best possible job I can do right now, because I might not be around tomorrow. My friends ask me, why do you put so much time into doing the next season of the podcast or whatever? I say, because I might not have time. I might not be around 2 months from now to do this. I need to do this now. I need to get this out there. I can only make decisions like this if I am completely rational, right? You hear these Stoic quotes out there saying, the body's just a vessel, be tough no matter what. And this is why Stoicism is unfortunately associated with this toxic masculinity of tough, go get her done, which is not the case. But Stoicism is more, okay, hold on. I do feel like a butthole right now. Like my sinuses hurt. I have a headache. My throat is sore. My joints hurt. But you know what? Ismail's getting up in the morning. It's early for him as well. You've powered through the day, you've done your other duties, you can do this as well. Hey, you're still sitting down on your butt, you can power through this, it's fine. And I'm sure he would understand, and at least it gives him the option to say, it was a pleasure meeting you, Anderson, let's record this another time because you sound like a broken duck. But at least I would have done the right thing. See, that's a rational decision. How I feel doesn't enter into the equation. And I can only do that if I keep emotions out of my ruling faculty. And that's one of the tools that Stoicism teaches you, is how to stay in this inner citadel where nothing can kind of penetrate you, where you can rule you just from your consciousness, just from your soul, just from your spirit, just from your rational mind, whatever you want to refer to it as, the real you, without succumbing to the emotions or pain or desires of your vessel or body.
Super interesting. And side note is that me and of course our audience appreciate this talk and you showing up. So thank you one more time. But if you say, okay, this is really the emotional state and the non-emotional state that you say the rationale is like to show up and to do this talk, you've done your duties. Have you always been like that? Or is this something that also those books really triggered in you? And when did that change over time?
I'm so glad I was on mute when you said that, because I couldn't help but laugh out loud really hard for anyone who doesn't see the video for this, because I'm a super emotional guy. I'm a very angry person. I have, anger management issues, I guess, before all of this. But, like everybody else with minor mental afflictions that go unnoticed, like anger management, I learned how to cope with it. And I turned that into drive at the office, drive at work. And I worked a little harder than the next guy. And I successfully parlayed it into something that got me more money. So there was no problem, right? Wrong, because making money is not the objective. I was still mentally not healthy. Now I'm mentally healthy. And now it's like, whatever the world throws at me, bring it.
You're going to be positive about it. And yeah, I would have been interested, like, how often are you still like frustrated or in fact getting angry? Does this still happen? Or is there something that you pause or something that you regularly do if those emotions in fact come up? I mean, maybe you're at a state where they don't come up anymore, but what would you say can you do if they happen to come up?
So the emotion, I used to get angry, all the time. I used to feel emotions all the time. Now I get angry all the time and feel emotions all the time. I just don't act on them anymore. And I recognize them now. I see them for what they are. I will admit they are no longer as loud as they were. They don't flare up as much as they used to. So I suppose what could argue that I've suppressed them, I don't think that's the case. I still feel the adrenaline in my body. I still, and I like that. Look, I drive a V8 Mustang. Okay. I like the rush of the adrenaline. So when I get angry, I know I like that feeling, and I know my body wants to feed off of that, but I recognize it immediately. And I'm like, I see you. I got you. You're not welcome in my ruling faculty. That's literally it. So one of my favorite scenes from any modern movie now, but one of the recent Avenger ones, it's not that recent, I guess 10 years ago, the Hulk says at a certain point, they're trying to figure out how he can control his anger, and he won't tell him and he won't tell them, and finally he's like, you want to know how I control my anger? He's like, my secret is I'm always angry. That's what I tell people who haven't seen me in years, because the change, man, is tangible. So when people talk to me, they refer to me literally as the Anderson of the before times and Anderson of the now times. Like, the change in me is significant, both as a father, a husband, an employee, a boss, a coach, a neighbor, a random guy on the street, you name it. Everything I do has changed, not because I'm forcing any of it, and I don't feel burdened with any of this. I'm not trying to get into some cosmic reward system. I'm not driven by anything like that's external to anything outside of my own mind. My mind says, how can I make things better right now? And it could be as simple as dude, my neighbor down the street hasn't mowed his grass in 3 weeks. That's not normal. Let me go check. Right? Just simple as that. And go with my lawnmower and knock on his door and be like, ah, you sprained your, I got you, bro. And just mow his lawn. And I do stuff like that. And people love it. And they see this. And the neighborhood over the past years has changed. People are outside more. I've taken pictures of my neighborhood where there were no tables and benches on the front. And now every house outside has benches and tables and everyone's talking. So big change happens through small acts. It just takes a little bit of time, but it takes consistent effort. And again, that's the philosophy, I guess. That's my philosophy, I guess.
No, and that's super inspiring, because I would fully confirm that big changes happen because small changes happen, right? So one step at a time will lead to big leaps in, a whole neighborhood transforming into more open, more neighborhood friendly, whatever you want to call it. So very nice. That's super interesting. Another question I had was, you earlier talked about time and the importance of time. Could you talk a little bit to time, and maybe also to the limitations of time and to the mortality that all of us carry with us?
You're asking a Stoic if he wants to talk about time. Is awesome, because Stoics were all about death. So there's two things, every philosophy has the top three things that are known about them is usually wrong. Stoicism is known for being tough guys. It's wrong. It's known for being all about death, and I have Memento Mori, remember death, written right here on my right hand, okay, with a forearm. So yes, we have death surrounding us, but it's not because we love death or we're infatuated by it. But I've seen the Stoic skull mugs, tough guy mugs, right? Here's why we are so in love with time, with death. It's because one, we don't want to be afraid of it, and especially you got to imagine back in the day when Stoicism was being built. Anybody could have come into your compound and just stabbed you to death. You had new rulers every 2 weeks. Somebody could have just come in, 3 horse riders, and there goes your daughter. All right, well, ciao. That's where you lived. So you had to be okay with your own death. So there's that element to it. But the other more important part is related to time, because when you really accept, and I mean really accept, that you will die, and that you accept when I accept my wife will die, and that this time is borrowed. Well, every moment I spend with her all of a sudden becomes super, super important, right? It's not important to spend all my time with her, because that's not my objective in life. My objective in life is to make the world a better place, right? So it sounds callous and cold as a Stoic to say, my wife doesn't matter. All that matters to make the world a better place. Well, my role as a father and husband and homeowner is important. So I'm not going to give up on that. However, it's not anywhere near my main objective, which is make the world better. Part of that is when I do have conversations with my wife, then it's my only thing. She's the most important thing, because it's the most important moment. And when I can, do something for her, it's like, no, this is the most important thing right now, because I might not get to next week, next year. So that's our infatuation with death and time. We take time very, very seriously, because we know the impermanence of time. And you might have seen these popular Memento Mori calendars out there, where you basically, and anybody could do this, you don't have to pay for something, just get a spreadsheet, draw out a bunch of squares, months per year, years per expected lifetime, and then black out the squares that you've already lived, and then look at the squares that are left. Okay, it's simple exercise. And you start realizing, holy shnikes, guys, I don't have a lot of time left. What am I supposed to be doing here? Because clearly I haven't figured this out yet. That's usually the first panicky response that people get, right? Which is where this quest for, what do I do with my life? These questions come into, where we'll get back to the first book I was talking about. But anyways, so to finish on time, time is one of those, again, central pillars to Stoics, because everything comes back to rational mind in the present moment. The present moment is our eternal, it's our forever. All we've ever had is the present moment. All we will ever have is the present moment. All we know is the present. So that is eternal. As long as I'm virtuous in the present moment right now, I'm a good person and I'm living a good life. And I know I don't have the opportunity to do that for too many more present moments. So let me do my best right now.
So life doesn't happen too much in the past, and life doesn't happen in the future where you could mortgage your present self in order to be happy at some point in life because of the next career move or the next big step or the next big paycheck. But life happens basically in this present moment, and this is where you put your focus as well, no? And it doesn't matter if it's a conversation with your wife or playing with your kid or doing the, I don't know, next Excel sheet that you have on your desk, right? I mean, I could imagine there is different tasks that Anderson or that any person has to deal with or complete. If we talk about that, I mean, you just gave one tool, one reflection tool, but if we talk about work-life balances, and I mean, you come from the financial industry, you work in the financial industry still. Is there any thoughts you have on work-life, especially if you look at it from a lens of a Stoic or of a Stoic practitioner?
Sure. So let me set the background to this a little bit. In my second book, that's called Your Duality Within, I set the terms, again, my definitions of things, but I have this great, at the beginning, at the preface, I say, hey, this is what this word means in my lexicon. So there's what I call the autopilot, which is the animal body, this vessel's primitive mind, because it does have a mind of its own, right? Modern psychology, we refer to this as the leopard brain or lizard brain or both. And then there's the other mind, the higher mind, right? The rational mind. I refer to it as the rational mind. Some might refer to it as the soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever. Modern psychology refer to it as the mammal brain, the higher brain, right? Mammalian brain, excuse me. And the reason why this is important is the brain, as we all know, is a resource hog. It burns about 20% of the resource of the calorie intake in the body. So we don't use it that much. We actually don't tap into our brain that often. And the autopilot is great at this, right? These heuristic loops that we have in our brains are great at doing these repeat tasks. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say heuristic loops, one simple example is, think about the last time you drove somewhere from point A to point B. You got there, but you weren't actually paying attention to how you got there, did you? Nah, you were probably fiddling with the phone or GPS or thinking about something or another. So the autopilot is a great resource-saving mechanism, okay? If this stuff is interesting, this in the second book, I talk about all of this first from an anthropological perspective to explain how this vessel evolved to house all of this, right? This hardware. Because then the software kicks in about 75,000 years ago with the cognitive revolution, excuse me. And that's where the rational mind comes in, this higher capacity. All of this is the necessary background to get to the tools. So the two main tools I recommend are journaling and to-do lists. I'll start with the to-do lists because this is where the rational mind and the autopilot come in. The rational mind is great at determining what you should be doing. It knows when it's emotionless and ordinary, right? What you need to, do you need to chase that paycheck? Do you need to go chase that skirt and try and convince her to come home with you? Do you need to go get that car because you're, right? It's very good at figuring out what the right thing to do is. And we all know, every listener knows that we always know what the right thing to do is. We just kind of don't follow it and conveniently make excuses, but we all know what the right thing to do is. That's the rational mind. So as a Stoic, we use any tool we can, journaling being one of them, but we use any way we can to get the rational mind to determine what the objective is, okay? With the roadmap set out, there, now you can leave the reins with the autopilot to do its thing in a very efficient manner, because it is not the enemy. This body in which we exist, yeah, it's a vessel, but it's my friend. Yeah, at first it's my enemy because we have to first, establish rules and roles, and like any good relationship, we have to establish who's who and responsible for what. But once that's established, it's a beautiful friendship. So you still have to, the autopilot still has its place. So as a Stoic, I'm managing this duality. I'm not shunning one side or the other. They're both awesome, right? That's one tool. Another big tool is journaling. Now, for a Stoic, reflection, reflecting in your journal is what we refer to as meditation. So, Eastern, when you say meditation, a lot of us think of the Eastern Zenful meditation where you would sit down quietly and close your eyes and repeat a mantra, which is also very awesome. And I recommend to everyone, but it's hard to get into. How I got into it is what I recommend to most people is journaling, which is the number one Stoic tool. I always repeat, journaling. It sounds silly. And sometimes a journal may be just a Dear Diary kind of thing. But oftentimes when you start writing down, you end up having a conversation with yourself. And here's why. Remember that duality within. This is, let's not forget that. It's important. We have this thing called muscle memory. Again, these heuristic loops. We can type on a keyboard with muscle memory. We can draw with muscle memory. We can even make music on a musical instrument with muscle memory. We can have a conversation with muscle memory without ever really tapping into the conversation, right, with someone. But you cannot take a pen, put it on a piece of paper, and write down words without triggering your rational mind. And that is why the Stoics refer to journaling as meditation, because when you start talking to yourself, or what we call checking in with yourself, well, that's when you start really living. Otherwise, you're just an autopilot going through the motions. It's only when you check in with yourself can you determine, hey, is the ship pointed in the right direction? Okay, cool. All right, let's keep going.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a super interesting perspective on journaling. Now that you have this heuristic system 1, system 2, that's what Kahneman calls it in the thinking fast and slow. And that you basically have to tap in with the rational thinking mind if you want to keep a journal. Can you enlighten us a little bit? How do you keep a journal? Is it like every day? Is it in the morning, in the evening? Is there any recommended practices? I don't know if we can link something. How do you keep your journal as an expert?
Well, I don't know if there's any such thing as an expert journaler, but so the one downside to doing all of this on the side, all of Anderson's work on the side, is when my mind opened up to, first when I realized there's an appetite out there to hear about these things, that there's not just other people like me who had the same questions, but shit tons of other people like me who are asking the same questions. And I started having all these ideas. And after I finished the series, Stoicism for a Better Life, the next book was going to be, and I started writing the skeleton for this, was going to be on journaling, how to meditate, like, a Stoic or whatever. Because I came to realize once those series were done, the number one advice I gave to people, and like really almost 3 out of 4, was journal, or it involved journal. Grab a journal. This is how important journaling is. The way I explain it to people, if you don't journal already, this was the case for me. And every time I share the story, most people go, yeah, that's about how mine went too. But the way it works is you first start writing, you grab a new book, grab a pen, you're all excited, you start writing, and then it starts getting dark, and then you put it away, and then you come back a few days later, you start writing again, and then it starts getting dark, and then you kind of push it away, and you come back the next day, and you get really angry, and you start writing. After a while, you have this kind of mental diarrhea on paper that just looks sick, and you start reading this, and you go, is this me? Is this okay? Like, I don't know, dude. So, and this is a common reaction, and this was honestly my reaction. And I keep every single page of my journals, and I, true CPA fashion, they're numbered and everything. Right? And the first page, I look at it every once in a while. I start jokingly, hey, whoever this is for, ... And then I just flip through the next few pages, and sometimes the words get big sometimes, and it's just chaotic and messy. And the reason for that is because our minds are freaking chaotic and messy. We're not complicated people. We're not complicated beings. So if our rational mind is triggered by putting pen to paper, and the paper paints a very dark picture, well, that's because it's a very dark place in there, guy. Let's get more of those emotions out on paper. So step 1 to journaling, just write. It's okay. Just write. If you need to burn it, burn it. It's cool. Just write though. Get it out there. Get the bad juju out. Okay. And that might take a while. It might be weeks even. And then you start getting into this kind of discernible thought pattern. You're not even in a conversation level yet, but at least you're starting to document things, and you're starting to say, okay, I feel like this now, and I suppose I should be. You start focusing in on things you know you should be focusing on, right? Eventually, you get to the next steps. Now, when you get to more serious, when I started really applying this, I printed myself a little list in my journal, and I would make sure I ticked it off every day. Like, okay, write something you're grateful for. Write something, all right, cool. Now I've evolved to a point where I use it ad hoc, but ad hoc is all the time. I'm constantly talking to myself. So in the mornings, I almost always write in the mornings because it's my mantra for the day. What am I going to focus on today? I can't focus on everything. I literally pick one thing every day. I mean, it's not rock. Even the Dalai Lama does the same thing, right? Every day, he wakes up he does 3 hours of reading every morning to prepare for his day, right? And this guy is the most enlightened person, arguably, in the world right now, or one of. I'm just little old me, and I got 15, 20 minutes on a chair. I'll just focus on one thought, but I give myself something simple, like, don't say anything negative. Okay. I can still do my job. I can still, right? But everything comes out in a positive way. It's nothing huge, but it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort on my part because I have to pay attention, but at least I'm paying attention to it, right? Anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but just to finish up on this, basically I'll give myself goals, and then I'll write again at lunch, to check in with myself. How many of these goals have I accomplished? What's left? Oh, all right. Here, I have these 3 left. Now go in the afternoon and make sure you do those. I give myself like short-term objectives. So it's a very disciplined approach in that sense. And then I might just grab it here and there to make decisions. Anything from decisions at work to do I need a new garage door opener, to whatever. If I need to make a rational decision and I don't have the capacity, or I haven't come up with anything fairly quickly, well, let's write it down. It could be a simple pro-con list.
So that to me sounds like, again, a quick and brief overview of what are you grateful for to start the day off with, also in a positive mind, but then also to combine your task list basically with your autopilot, right? So in the morning, you write down, this is the 3 things I would like to do, and this is my priority, and priority does not have a plural because priority, the word by itself, is singular. And then you follow up on that, and then you go into your working day, you have lunch, and then you check in, okay, have I already done what was in the morning, the most important thing? And maybe you haven't done it and you can do it in the afternoon, and maybe this could change, but just to reflect on that, to get transparency on that, helps you to basically get things done. Is that an accurate assumption?
Exactly. The only clarification to make there is the to-do list, the priority list, is my priority list, not to do for work or home, but my necessities. We have to go back to those spiritual necessities, right? So it goes back to something from how do I make the world better, not what do I have to get done off of my task list. So it'll be a series of tasks or to-dos associated to how can I make the world better? But absolutely, you nailed it.
Super, super cool. Before we go into a few questions that I ask all of my guests on this podcast, you just talk about making this world a better place. And the question that comes to mind for me is like, why is it, or is it important to have a purpose? And if so, why? And what's your purpose?
Is it important to have a purpose? Yeah, I think so. There's a reason we've been asking these questions for thousands a year, basically, as long as we have written records, right? As soon as your tummy's full and you're lying down on your back and looking up at the stars, you start wondering why. So, and that's why when I wrote my first book, when I decided, hey, let me just put something out there for the fun of it, to be able to say, I wrote a book. I said, what's the one topic out of everything that I've learned? The purpose of life, of course. So the first book, Your User's Manual, find your purpose in life, right? I think a purpose in life is absolutely crucial, because he who has a why can endure anyhow. Friedrich Nietzsche, right? We all need Frankel, I forget his name. What's his name? He wrote Life Without Meaning. A Holocaust survivor. He invented logotherapy. Again, same thing. He found meaning in concentration camps. Right? Meaning and purpose has nothing to do with greatness by our definition. It has to do with greatness within. So yes, purpose is absolutely necessary. Doesn't take that long to figure it out. In my book, I've boiled it down to 6 steps, and it's unique to each individual. That's the key. It cannot be biased by your parents, your church or whatever, your friends, or certainly not any crackpot podcast people listen to online. But do ask the questions for yourself, and start to try and figure out the real reasons. For me, the Socratic method worked. I just started Xing off, answers that really didn't make sense, and I ended up with this Stoicism, because it literally lands in the middle of everything, in the middle of all the crazy stuff and everything I learned. Stoicism was smack in the middle. That's why it works for me, but for somebody else, it might be something else. But I digress. Purpose, very important. Find it, and it'll give you happiness in life. In my opinion, it's impossible without it.
Anderson, where can people find out more about you, and where can they get in touch? I know that you have a YouTube, that you have Instagram. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Again, I really have no business having books or having an online presence. I'm very lucky to have any presence I have. I am somehow on social media thanks to my wife's help, on Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, thanks to my daughter. Now this year I'm making a big push. So now I'm personally on interacting with listeners. So anybody who's going to jump on now will notice the presence is only starting now. But I'll let you find out why. I do explain the story of why I'm online now and I'm sharing my life. But you can find everything at stoicismforabetterlife.com, or at Anderson Silver on any of the platforms, at Anderson Silver author on, you said it, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, all of them, and Twitter. Everywhere.
And we will link all of that, and people will for sure get in touch, because that was super inspiring. Anderson, I have a few questions to finish up, especially knowing your vessel's state of today. So I have 3 questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first one would be, what influenced or motivated you in the past 7 days?
Easy. My wife. She motivates me every day. Every single day. She is the most inspiring person I know. And it's always been the case because she continually changes and adapts. So in the past 7 days, she has helped me. It's actually been a pretty tough week around here for me, but she kept reminding me some awesome quotes from these books she read by some guy named Anderson Silver, and it really helped me through them. No, but joking aside though, it's helped that my wife jumped on this journey with me, and we're able to bounce ideas off of each other, and we're each other's rock, because at any given time, 99% of the time, one of us is okay. And so absolutely, it's my wife.
Super nice words. And I believe it's essential to have good team members, right? Could be your wife, could be your kids, could be your partner, could be anything, but that's very inspiring. Very glad to hear that. Who are mentors or people who do you look up to?
Mentors, it's going to be the philosophers, because they're the ones that really spoke to me. Is it because of the order in which I started reading everything? Maybe. I don't think so. I think it's just the rational approach to trying to explain whatever the heck this is made sense to me. So I am very inspired by my Stoic teachers, but also like Diogenes of Sinope. I don't know if you know this, that Diogenes, he was, a cynic, super great influence in my life. Like I keep saying, I wish I had the courage and strength like Diogenes, or even in modern times, like René Descartes. My God, I did an interview on René Descartes on another podcast, the Juan on Juan podcast last Monday. And, he's not just the godfather of modern day philosophy, but he took the sciences, he took math and then morphed it to make more sense of other cognitive creative ideas he was having in the philosophical world. So he was just like, hey, math, here's a new type of math I'm introducing to make sense of my idea. Like, it's so boss, So these guys really inspire me to think, I don't want to say outside the box, but think inside the box, but with tools from the outside. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. It certainly does, especially if you read some of those great thinkers. Now, Descartes, Diogenes, I hear Seneca, I heard before. And this is a little side or sub questions, but what is good books that you recommend each and anyone if they want to start looking into Stoicism a little bit more? Is there like books that you recommend or authors that you recommend to start off with, besides the ones that you are writing, of course?
I usually break it down into three categories: ancient texts, analysis of ancient texts, and modern day books. I won't get into any of the modern day stuff because your readers are going to want to hear about the cool stuff in the past. So Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is very popular because it's literally a Roman emperor's journals. And it is one of three, surviving quote unquote complete books that drive our philosophy today. And it's a great look into his life. A life of a Roman, a life of an emperor, and the life of a Stoic. There's also my own personal favorite, Epictetus. For those who don't know Epictetus, he was a slave turned philosopher, and he's the king of indifference. And in the Western world, our biggest challenge is learning indifference to our externals, right? To get off that hedonic treadmill. And so Epictetus, I always recommend to everyone. Now, he, like Socrates, he never wrote anything down. So the only existing text we have of him is what little bit his student Arian wrote down. So Epictetus's Discourses or Enchiridion, super hilarious. Like, if there was one ancient philosopher that would give, most likely to be a stand-up comedian in the future, Epictetus would be it. So one of those two, I think your listeners would get a great kick out of.
Okay, perfect. And we will link all that. Perfect. And I've read both, and I can only confirm that it's very fun read, and it's also very enlightening read. So it's very good. And here is the final questions. I call it the three truths. So Anderson, imagine a scenario where you're traveling in space for multiple years all by yourself. And after many years, you encounter a human-like society, and they can only process three facts or truths about humanity before they decide whether or not they want to get to know us. What is those three facts or truths that you share with them?
You're not going to like my answer. It's going to depend on the context of my travel. Am I trying to save humanity here, or am I just introducing humanity?
You choose your destination.
All right. Well, in that case, unfortunately, it would not be a very pretty picture. It would be actually exactly the way my ancients describe it. We're a social animal with a capacity for reason. So social, we like to be in groups. We're animals. Okay. We are not very good to one another. And when it comes to resources, we're downright nasty. We don't share. But we have a capacity for reason. And that's what we have to tap into. And that's exactly where Stoicism comes in.
Perfect. Wonderful last words. And I think a very, honest picture of humanity. So thank you so much, Anderson. That was really, really cool.
That was awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Much appreciated.
If you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, share this episode with a friend or two, and make sure to subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. On Apple, you may leave up to a 5-star review. Know that you will help to create more meaningful content if you do. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a direct mail to contact@ishmaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.
Do more of what makes you happy.
Be yourself positive.
Change.
Just another mindset.